If a narcissist has ever been a part of your life, Maya's story will feel painfully familiar. When Maya Rodriguez finally packed her last suitcase on that cold February morning, she couldn't stop staring at the engagement ring still sitting on her nightstand. 3 years of promises, 3 years of next month maybe, 3 years of believing that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. But let me back up a little, because this story, it starts with hope. The kind of hope that makes you ignore all the red flags waving right in front of your face. Maya met David Chen at a coffee shop in downtown Seattle. She was 28, working as a marketing coordinator, living in a tiny studio apartment that smelled like her neighbor's cooking. David? Well, David was everything she thought she wanted. Tall, confident, with this way of making her feel like she was the only person in the room. "You know what I love about you?" he said on their second date, reaching across the candlelit table to touch her hand. "You're real. You're not like these other women who just want my money." Maya laughed, thinking it was sweet, thinking he was being vulnerable. She had no idea she was hearing the first of many lines he'd perfected over the years. Within 6 months, David had painted this incredible picture of their future. He'd lean against her kitchen counter, coffee mug in hand, describing the house they'd buy in Queen Anne. 4 bedrooms, he'd say, his eyes lighting up. 1 for us, 1 for my home office, and 2 for the kids. Can you imagine little feet running around, Sunday morning pancakes? Maya could imagine it. God, she could see it so clearly it hurt. "So when do we call the realtor?" she'd ask, snuggled up against him on her tiny couch. "Let me just get through this audit at work first. Then we'll be golden." Another month, another excuse, another beautiful story about their future that somehow never quite materialized. Now, you might be wondering why Maya didn't see through this earlier. Trust me, she was asking herself the same question by year 2. But there's something you need to understand about narcissistic manipulation. It's not obvious. It's not cartoon villain obvious. David never said no. He never crushed her dreams outright. Instead, he'd get excited with her, plan with her, make her feel like they were a team working toward the same goal. The delays always had reasonable explanations. Work was crazy. The market was bad. His mother was sick and needed help. "I hate that we're not in our house yet," he'd say, pulling Maya close. "You deserve everything, baby, and I'm going to give it to you. I promise." Those promises felt like gold. Maya would carry them with her to her job at the marketing firm, sharing snippets with her coworker Jennifer during lunch breaks. "He's probably just being careful," Jennifer would say, though she could hear the doubt creeping into her voice by month 18. But doubt was starting to creep into Maya's voice too, especially after the Christmas incident. December 2021, David had promised they'd use his bonus to put a down payment on a house. "This is it," he'd said in November. "By Valentine's Day, we'll be painting our first bedroom." Christmas morning came and went. No mention of the house. Maya finally brought it up on New Year's Eve. "Oh, about that," David said, not even looking up from his phone. "Turns out the bonus got delayed. Tax stuff. But hey, this gives us more time to save up, right? Maybe we should wait until we can afford something even better." That night, as fireworks exploded outside her studio apartment window, Maya felt something crack inside her chest. Not break, just crack. Like ice on a frozen pond when spring starts coming. But here's what makes these situations so heartbreaking. David wasn't done dreaming. In fact, the dreams got bigger, more elaborate. "You know what? Forget Queen Anne," he said in February. "I'm thinking Bellevue, better schools for the kids, and not just 4 bedrooms. What about 5? A guest room for when your parents visit." Maya wanted to feel excited. She really did. But that crack in her chest had spread a little wider. "David," she said carefully, "what about the house we looked at last month? The one with the view of the Sound? You said it was perfect." "It was perfect for then," he replied, that confident smile never wavering. "But we're growing, babe. Our dreams are growing. Don't you want the best?" Of course she wanted the best. But more than that, she wanted something. anything real. The engagement ring came in March. Beautiful, expensive, everything Maya had dreamed of. David proposed at their favorite restaurant, got down on one knee, the whole thing. "Now we can really start planning," he said as Maya stared at the diamond through tears. "The house, the wedding, everything. This is just the beginning." Maya should have been ecstatic. Instead, she felt tired, bone-deep tired, because she'd heard "this is just the beginning" so many times before. The wedding planning followed the same pattern. David had opinions about everything. The venue had to be perfect. The guest list needed to be bigger. They should wait until summer when his work calms down. Actually, maybe spring would be better for photos. "Let's elope," Maya suggested one evening in July after another venue fell through due to David's last-minute concerns about the price. "Elope?" David looked genuinely shocked. "Baby, you deserve better than that. You deserve the wedding of your dreams. Don't you want your family there? Don't you want the whole fairy tale?" Maya did want those things, but she was starting to want something else more. Reality. September brought another shift in the houseplants. David had been researching different neighborhoods, he said. "Maybe we should consider Kirkland instead. Or wait, what about that new development going up in Bothell?" "I thought we decided on Bellevue," Maya said. "We did, but I've been thinking." And off he went, painting another beautiful picture of another perfect future that somehow always seemed just out of reach. That night, Maya called her sister Elena in California. "How long has this been going on?" Elena asks after Maya explained the latest change in plans. 3 years, Maya said, and hearing herself say it out loud made something twist in her stomach. "Maya," Elena's voice was gentle but firm. 3 years without a single concrete step forward? He bought the ring. That's not a house. That's not a wedding date. That's not even a wedding venue. Maya stared at the ring on her finger. It was beautiful. It was also the only tangible thing David had actually ever given her when it came to their future plans. The final straw came in November. Maya found a house listing herself. Perfect size, perfect neighborhood, perfect price. She'd done the math. They could afford it if David was making what he claimed to be making. "Look," she said excitedly, showing him the listing on her laptop. "It just came on the market. We could see it this weekend." David glanced at the screen for maybe 10 seconds. Yeah, it's nice. But the kitchen looks kind of dated, don't you think? And I'm not sure about that neighborhood. Aren't the schools kind of mediocre?" "You haven't even looked at the school ratings," Maya said. "I don't need to look. I know that area. Trust me. We can do better." That word, trust. Maya had been trusting David for 3 years. Trusting his timeline, his excuses, his promises. And where had it gotten her? Still in her studio apartment, still waiting, still hoping for a future that David seemed perfectly content to keep dangling just out of reach. December 15th. Maya will never forget that date. She'd been thinking about their conversation for weeks, and finally, she decided to try a different approach. "David," she said over dinner, "I want to set some concrete goals for next year. Specific dates." "Goals are good," he said, cutting his steak. "I'm all about goals." January 31st. That's our deadline to choose a neighborhood and start looking at houses. March 31st. We put in an offer. June 1st. We close. His fork paused halfway to his mouth. Those timelines seem kind of aggressive, don't you think? We've been planning this for 3 years. Right, but you know how these things work. Real estate is complicated. We can't just rush into. What about the wedding? Let's set a date. September 15th, 2023. David set down his fork completely. "Maya, baby, you're stressing about this for no reason. These things happen when they're supposed to happen. We can't force it." And there it was. The truth Maya had been dancing around for months. David didn't want these things to happen. He wanted to want them. He wanted Maya to believe he wanted them, but actually making them real, that was never part of his plan. "I need to use the bathroom," Maya said, standing up from the table. In the restaurant bathroom, staring at herself in the mirror, Maya finally admitted what she'd been avoiding. She wasn't in a relationship with someone who was building a future with her. She was in a relationship with someone who enjoyed the fantasy of building a future as long as it never became real. She thought about Dr. Emily Carter, the therapist her sister had mentioned. Elena had seen Dr. Carter after her own divorce and had nothing but good things to say. Maybe it was time. When Maya returned to the table, David was scrolling through his phone. "Everything okay?" he asked, without looking up. "I made an appointment with a therapist. I think I need some help figuring things out." David's head snapped up. "A therapist? For what?" "For me. For us. For figuring out why we never seem to make progress on anything we plan." "Maya, we don't need therapy. We just need patience. Good things take time." But Maya was done waiting for good things. She wanted real things, even if they weren't perfect. The conversation with Dr. Emily Carter happened on a gray January morning in a comfortable office that smelled like lavender and felt like hope. "Tell me about these promises," Dr. Carter said, her voice warm but direct. Maya found herself spilling everything. The houses that were never quite right, the wedding dates that were never quite perfect, the constant planning that never led to action. "It sounds exhausting," Dr. Carter said. "It is," Maya admitted. "I feel like I'm always waiting for my life to start." Dr. Carter leaned forward slightly. "Maya, what you're describing sounds like what we call future faking in psychology. It's when someone makes elaborate promises about the future as a way to keep you emotionally invested without any real intention of making them real." The term hit Maya like a physical blow. Future faking. That's exactly what it was. People who do this, Dr. Carter continued, often have narcissistic traits. They enjoy the admiration and devotion that these promises generate, but they're not actually interested in the responsibility that comes with making them real. Maya thought about David's excitement when they looked at house listings, the way his eyes lit up when he described their future children's bedrooms. It had all felt so genuine. "But he seems to really want these things," Maya said. "He wants the feeling of wanting them. He wants you to see him as this person who has big dreams and grand plans. But actually executing those plans, that's much harder work, and it doesn't give him the same emotional payoff." Over the next several weeks, Maya started to see the pattern everywhere. David's stories about his promotion that was always just around the corner, his plans to start working out that began every Monday, his promise to call his elderly grandmother that he'd been meaning to do for months. David was a collector of intentions, not a person of actions. The conversation Maya had been dreading came in February. She'd been seeing Dr. Carter for a month, and things were becoming clearer. "I think we need to take a break," Maya said. David's reaction was swift and predictable. "A break? Maya, baby, where is this coming from? We're so close to everything we've planned. This is the worst possible timing." "Close to what, exactly?" "We're not close to anything. We're exactly where we were 3 years ago." "That's not true. We're engaged now. We have the ring. We just need a little more time." "Time for what?" "You've had 3 years." For the first time since Maya had known him, David looked genuinely panicked. "If this is about the house, I already told you. I've been looking. I have 3 appointments set up for next weekend." I almost laughed. Almost. Because I knew those appointments would get canceled, or the houses would have problems, or the timing wouldn't be right. "David, when is the last time you followed through on something you promised me?" The silence stretched between them like a canyon. "I bought you the ring," he finally said. That was 10 months ago. Maya moved out the following week, not because she stopped loving David, but because she finally started loving herself enough to stop accepting scraps of a future that was never going to materialize. The weeks that followed were hard. David called constantly, each time with a new plan, a new timeline, a new promise. He'd found the perfect house. He'd set a wedding date. He'd changed, really changed this time. But Maya had learned to recognize the difference between words and actions. And David's actions, for 3 years, had been to keep her waiting. In therapy, Dr. Carter helped Maya understand something crucial. You weren't wrong to believe him initially, she said. People like David are convincing because they convinced themselves first. In the moment he's describing your dream house, he probably believes he wants to buy it. But when it comes time to actually do the work, the real, unglamorous work of making it happen, the fantasy loses its appeal. Maya nodded, thinking about all those Saturday afternoons spent looking at house listings, David's enthusiasm so genuine that it had swept her along at every single time. The problem, she said, is that they need you to keep believing in order to maintain their own self-image as someone who has these grand plans. Your faith in their promises feeds their narcissistic supply. It was a harsh truth, but it was also liberating. Maya hadn't been crazy or demanding or impatient. She'd been reasonable. She had wanted what most people want, to move forward with the person she loved. 6 months later, Maya signed a lease on a 1-bedroom apartment in Capitol Hill. Not Bellevue, not Queen Anne, not any of the neighborhoods David had talked about, but it was hers. Really, truly hers. She painted the bedroom a soft green that she'd always loved, but David had said was too bold. She hung pictures without asking anyone's opinion. She bought a small dining table and invited Elena to visit. You look different, Elena said over dinner in Maya's tiny but perfect kitchen. I feel different, Maya replied. I feel like I'm actually living my life instead of waiting for it to start. That evening, as Maya sat on her small balcony watching the Seattle skyline, she thought about the house that never was, the wedding that never happened, the future that David had painted in such beautiful detail, but had never intended to build. She felt sad about it, but not devastated, because she'd finally learned the difference between dreams and plans. Dreams are beautiful, but they're abstract. Plans have deadlines and concrete steps, and someone willing to do the actual work of making them real. Maya pulled out her phone and opened a real estate app. Not to fantasize, but to actually look. Her credit was good, her savings account was growing. She was pre-approved for a modest mortgage. The house she could afford wasn't anything like the mansion David had described. It was a small craftsman bungalow that needed some work, but it was real, available, possible. Maya bookmarked it and made a note to call the realtor in the morning. Not to look, not to dream, but to actually, finally, start building the life she wanted. As for David, last Maya heard, he was engaged again to someone new who probably believed all the same beautiful promises, who was probably looking at house listings and planning a wedding that would always be just 6 months away. Maya felt sorry for that woman, but she also felt grateful, because sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is learning to stop waiting for someone else to make your dreams come true. And sometimes the most beautiful future is the one you build yourself, one small, real step at a time. Dr. Carter had been right about something else too. Healing wasn't about learning to spot narcissists from a mile away. It was about learning to trust yourself, learning to recognize when someone's actions don't match their words, learning that you deserve someone who doesn't just dream with you, but builds with you. Maya was still learning, still growing, still catching herself falling for pretty promises from men who looked a little too much like David. But she was also learning to ask the right questions. Not, what do you want our future to look like? But what concrete steps are you taking to get there? Not, when will this happen? But what are you doing this week to make it happen? The difference between dreamers and builders, Maya had learned, isn't in the size of their vision. It's in the size of their commitment to making that vision real. And Maya, she was finally ready to build something real.